follow me, or could this shit about to go? I'm doing 500, I'm out of control, but there's nowhere to go.
I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, without further ado, so many of our fans, you guys have been requesting Yeezus. It's time that we've just got to do it, Tom.
All right.
We just got to review it. Kanye West, Yeezus. It's his 6th album. Kind of a, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy came out at the tail end of 2010. Kind of caught me by surprise because I hadn't really been a Kanye West fan, but then that album, really diving into it, kind of a large concept, dealt with a lot of themes, some great production on that album, a lot of really cool guest spots, and I ended up really liking that album, and I know that you have too. Now, going from that album to Yeezus is a bit of a stark contrast.
Yeah.
Tom, how would you describe the change in sound between My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and Yeezus?
We could spend all day on that. I think that My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy was a lot more about subtlety, a lot more about kind of atmosphere in the background of the beats.
It was more emotional too.
Yeah, oh, definitely. This album is in your face, overblown beats. There are still some subtleties and kind of things going on in the background, but for the most part, if something is going on in the mix at all, it is right in your face, it is front and center, and just compressed to hell.
It's like they've been listening to like sleigh bells, like Kanye West has been, he's a fan of indie music, so he's been probably listening to sleigh bells, treats, death grips. Yeah. I mean, he has to just be like loving just the giant sound, the in-your-face sound, because I mean, just from the moment that track 1 On Sight comes on, like you feel attacked by the electronic melodies and beats and synths that he's putting out to you. I mean, and even his vocals are more aggressive on this album.
By far.
On My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and on previous records, he's doing more just kind of lackadaisical rapping, just kind of rapping to the beat like a normal hip-hop artist would. On this album, he's almost like he's, in your face, yelling at you. Almost, he actually does yell at times.
Just spitting it, yeah.
His lyrics are even more biting on this one too, and that's something that I really got into. The more that I dug at this record and really got into some of the tracks later on the album, I noticed that Kanye was definitely going for a major theme, and that's one thing that I've always respected about this guy. Albeit he, from the media perspective, the media has a lot of attention on Kanye. He creates this arrogant persona of himself, pretentious, all that aside, he is good at making albums. He makes good music, he comes up with ideas, and he is a great producer. He really knows how to construct beats, he takes a concept, he's ambitious about it, and he goes after it. And I think Yeezus is the thesis statement for that. I mean, on this album, he took an idea, he wanted this dark, in-your-face sound that I think he's trying to redefine what modern-day hip-hop music is, what rap is to the modern world. And I feel like he accomplished that. I feel like he took and set his goals like really high and then just went for it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because kind of going off of that, hip-hop has always had a lot of bravado in it. Artists bragging about themselves, talking themselves up, and Kanye's no different if you listen to his past work. And there is some of that on Yeezus, but I feel like it's almost more of a satire against his own success. On tracks like I Am a God, I mean, there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek there. There's a lot of kind of facetious wordplay and the concept as it goes through, and then there's just like the desperate yelping and screaming at the end, and you can't help but feel like he's really got a statement to say with this album. Now, on top of that, I actually really didn't like this album at first. I came up on it a lot. I came to really enjoy it, but at first, the big thing to me was that I thought, well, I can tell he has something to say. He's trying to make a statement with this record, but does that really justify how it sounds? Does that justify the songwriting, the production style? Because at first, it just didn't really come off as all that pleasing to me. I really did learn to love the production style and the sound on here. I do like noisy music. Some of the production style even reminded me of like Year Zero era 9 Inch Nails. So you've got that paired with the rapping. I think it worked. I think it's a fresh sound. So then, I would almost compare it now bear with me here. I would compare it as far as its departure from Kanye's previous work to like Radiohead's Kid A. Yeah. It's an album we always come back to. It was a turning point in music, I consider, and also a turning point in Radiohead's discography because they basically took their mainstream success, completely shunned it, and because of their popularity, forced the mainstream music scene to go in their direction. I think that's exactly what Kanye is doing here.
Yeah.
He's one of the most commercially successful hip-hop artists of all time, and especially of our time, and so he is making people listen to this album, and whether they like it or not, and I know a lot of people aren't liking it, but I love the fact that they're still listening to it.
Yes.
And that is respectable beyond anything. No matter what I think of the music, I will always respect an artist who makes that move. So from there, it just comes down to whether I like it or not. And at first I really
and explaining why.
Yes, yes, because there's got to be a reason behind
Absolutely. And part of the reason why, you know, I really like the change that he goes for, and like I said, you know, I respect the hell out of this guy just for his ambition and how he, you know, values the album format, which is something we preach about all the time on Velocities and Music. So, I mean, that was great. But then there is the side that I always have to talk about with Kanye's music, and that's I just don't find that his vocal delivery is ever top of the genre.
I think his production skills surpasses rapping.
It sure does. And I was willing to overlook it in My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but as I've continued to listen to that record, I've liked it less and less simply because the rhymes weren't quite as good. His delivery seems awkward at times. And just quite honestly, it's a little bit off-putting. It doesn't. And whenever he tries to sing, he should just stop. But on this record, he addressed some of that. I don't think that the rhymes are as bad. I don't think that his flow is as bad. In fact, in a lot of these tracks where he's more intense, I think it sells the track. In fact, there are tracks on here where he doesn't do that, and I feel like those tracks suffer because they lack that intensity that Kanye was bringing to the table on some of the more intense tracks like Black Skinhead. Now, I personally feel like there's a couple tracks on the back half of this record where Kanye is singing, but it's with autotune. Also, where the track that Bon Iver collaborates with him, Justin Vernon's on the record. And, you know, I felt like the autotune kind of covers up the fact that he's a terrible singer, that he should never try to sing ever again. But at the same time, it's still autotune, and while it doesn't sound as bad, it doesn't sound good because it's autotune. And in general, autotune vocals, I just don't feel like they add that much value.
Well, especially when he's trying to make a statement that strays from the mainstream, to bring that back in, I feel like is kind of, I don't know. It's getting too close to home a little bit.
It's almost a gimmick.
Yeah, and in the same way, I've got big beef with track 6, I'm In It. I love the album up to that song, and then I feel like that song, it's the only song in this album I can say I just absolutely hate. And while there's always, and I said this about My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, there's always Kanye West lyrics that I just think don't fit, that just make me cringe and go, oh God, couldn't you have written any other line? And those show up in actually most of the songs, but usually the rest of the content is good enough that it doesn't ruin the whole track for me. But that song, my big problem with it is that the first 5 tracks really set up a theme. They really set up a mood, and you can tell the story and the impact that he's going for with this album. And then I'm In It, he's back to singing about pussy and going to the club or whatever shit, you know, that he's talking about. And I just feel like it completely goes against the stuff that he's setting up on the rest of the album.
Yeah, that contradiction is kind of annoying.
Yeah.
I will say, though, I didn't think that the music was that bad on that. Like, I could see lyrically how that's that departure can kind of be frustrating. But I thought musically it still held its own.
And structurally, it's actually kind of a cool song in the way that it moves. And a lot of the tracks on here are like that. Another interesting track I think that's worth pointing out is the closing track, Bound 2.
Yes.
Because that actually sounds a lot more like old classic Kanye, and it's got a much more optimistic vibe than the rest of the album.
Yeah, it's a really cool way to close the album.
It is. It's almost like it doesn't fit, but somehow it just works.
And especially coming right after track 9, Send It Up, which in my opinion is one of the best tracks of the year. I have not heard a song that is that in your face, that aggressive, and that memorable. I mean, it's just an all-around good track. Now, I think that track by track, this album is really hard to pick track picks, because I felt like I wanted to pick every single track on this album. Well, the reason for that is because they all work with one another to make one cohesive listen, and I think that that's the real strength of Yeezus, is that it just works together as one cohesive unit. It's hard not to listen to this entire thing straight through, and I gotta give credit to Kanye for putting together just a damn solid album.
And concisely, too.
Yes.
Because you listen to a lot of his old work, it'll be like 20 tracks, some really long ones, some skits, and I just feel like it drags. I love the fact that he had the tact to know that with a sound this abrasive, you can't have it go on for 60 or 70 minutes. You gotta keep it short. 10 tracks, I think it's what, maybe around 40 40 minutes or
Right.
something like that, and it just works as one concise musical statement.
And with the theme of brevity in mind, what would you give this?
I am going to go with an 82.
I'm going to go 81. So low 80s for us. That means that we really like this album. It's definitely something that, an album in 2013 that you guys definitely should check out. Even if you're not a Kanye West fan, I promise 1 or 2 listens through this thing will be worth your time, just from the fact that it's so abrasive at first. It's such a new idea, a new sound for both, you know, Kanye West as an artist and the genre in general, that it's definitely worth a listen for any avid music enthusiast. Please leave us a comment. Tell us what you thought of Yeezus at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and make sure you guys are telling us and having a conversation with us about the 2013 albums you're into, or really any other music you're into for that matter. We love talking to you guys. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Movie Music Critique Forward.
I throw these Maybach keys, I wear my heart on the sleeve. I know if we the new slaves, I see the blood on the leaves. I see the blood on the leaves. I see